Alright, well if there's anything watching the news has taught me is that there truly is nothing more scary than real life. Hello and welcome to the Sci-Fi-Night special. I'm your host, Sebastian Vendel-Martinez, and in this Halloween episode, we're once again gonna compare the silver screen to the much darker and grimier aspects of real life. So, the past two Halloweens here on Sci-Fi-Night, we first checked out real-life hauntings or curses that occurred during or around filming of horror movies, as well as real-life events that inspired episodes of The X-Files. I'll leave a link to both in the description. This time, we're back for more real-life horror as we're checking out actual events that served as the basis for horror movies. So, just to be clear, obviously we don't want to make light of any of murders or tragedies, but it's fascinating to see how much of real life seeps into entertainment we consume. And it's Halloween, so it's time to get scared, and what's scarier than real life? Alright, so let's get started with the first case, the 2003 shark flick, Open Water. Okay, so I actually saw this in the theater way back in 2003, before every single fucking movie had sharks in it, and I remember actually liking Open Water quite a bit for its simplicity and ambition on a tight budget. In it, a couple go scuba diving while on vacation, only to get left behind while still underwater by their tour group. Their absence isn't realized until far too late when hungry sharks start roaming the waters looking for nice, tasty tourists, and the couple have to do all they can to survive both treacherous waters and bloodthirsty sharks. So you're probably thinking, no real-life scuba tour group would actually leave two tourists in the middle of the ocean in shark-infested waters. But you're unfortunately underestimating the stupidity of humans. This movie is based on the real-life tragedy of Tom and Eileen Longeron, who were vacationing around the world in the late 90s. On January 25th, 1998, they were last seen scuba diving off the coast of Australia with a diving group. Unfortunately, there were mistakes made regarding the passenger count, so while the Longerons were submerged underwater, the boat that had taken them there embarked and they were left behind. The day after, their bags, wallets, and passports were found, prompting a search. It seems the couple survived for at least a day as a distress message was found by a fisherman. During the coming days and weeks, equipment that was either confirmed to be or believed to be belonging to the Longerons washed up, but sadly, the adventurous couple were never seen again. The diving company was ruined as a result of everything that happened, rightfully so, and the event brought much stricter rules and regulations to be implemented, but sadly, it came at the cost of two innocent lives. Alright, so from gross negligence to a crazy real-life event that I know you're not gonna believe, let's continue with the real-life basis of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, a demon hunting and killing people in their dreams to get revenge for their parents burning him alive. And killing Johnny Depp in his first major role. Great movie plot, hard real-life story to believe, and that's because the real events that inspired it didn't quite involve a demon. Or well, not necessarily. Director Wes Craven has gone on record to explain how he got the idea and is crazy enough to be a real-life X-File. Craven read an article about a group of nearly 20 Laotian refugees belonging to the Hmong people who had fled dictatorship and made their way to the United States. The Hmong people followed a type of animism in regards to religion, a belief that all things possess a spirit. However, upon making it to the US, many of the refugees started seeking medical aid for symptoms that seemed to be related to fright and paranoia, such as parasites living under their skin and imaginary diseases. Eventually, all of the 20 refugees died strange and mysterious deaths, ruled officially as deaths due to heart problems, but there was another problem that the doctors didn't want to speak of, what is now called sudden unexpected death syndrome. Oh geez, talk about getting right to the point with that medical classification. What happened was that they all died, most if not all of them in their sleep, for no clear reason. But many of the refugees proclaimed a fear of falling asleep due to what would happen. These people more or less died out of fright, and what's crazier is that there are still cases of this syndrome even today. Another creepy detail is that in Hmong culture, there is the story of a dab tsog, sorry for pronunciation. Either way, it's some kind of evil spirit that strangles you in your sleep And similar sort of spirits and myths actually exist in neighboring countries like Vietnam and Cambodia. This was a very clear inspiration for Wes Craven, who fused that real-life story with some of his own nightmares and would go on to craft one of the most well-known horror franchises of all time. And it's crazy that more people don't know the bizarre real-life circumstances surrounding the inspiration for the film. Alright, so this brings us to a lesser-known movies from the 70s based on some much more well-known violence and horror that occurred during the 40s. So here we return to a film that we talked about way back when we first started this channel, way back to our really bad videos. Anyway, in this 1974 flick, a masked serial killer is terrorizing the inhabitants of a small Texas town, all while being chased by the local sheriff. And this is the one entry on the list whose film plot is actually surprisingly close to the actual events that inspired it, and those events are one of the most notorious, still unsolved crime cases today. February 1946 in Texarkana, Texas, Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend Mary Laurie were out driving at night when they decided to pull over for the 1940s version of Netflix and chill. But it didn't take long before a man in a white mask with holes cut out for the eyes and mouth approached and attacked. He violently beat Jimmy Hollis and molested Mary Laurie, but luckily both lived to report it to the police. The next couple unfortunately weren't as lucky though. On March 24th, Richard Griffin and his girlfriend Polly Ann Moore parked on the side of a road at night and the killer struck again. All we know of what happened is the bloody remains of the brutal double murder found by another motorist and eventually the police. This prompted a huge manhunt that involved getting forces in from several counties spanning several states, and the Texas Rangers even got involved. Authorities questioned several suspects and put out a reward for information but couldn't find anything. And less than a month later, another brutal double murder had taken place, with a male shot multiple times in the head and the female sexually assaulted before being shot to death. Panic started spreading and people and media started dubbing this murderer as the Phantom Killer, since he was seen with a creepy mask and seemed to be able to disappear without a trace. He even got bolder by attacking people in their own homes, something that was replicated in the film, and it got to a point where people were afraid of going out at night, prompting the film title, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. But while the panic was most widespread, the so-called real-life boogeyman disappeared and never returned again. Nobody knows what happened to him or why he didn't kill again, but it served for a pretty solid 70s flick and a truly haunting period of time. All kinds of theories circulated, from an escaped German prisoner of war to a mental patient to a bunch of other things, but at the end, the only thing we know of this mysterious phantom killer is the bloody legacy he left behind him, his trademark mask, and the terror that Texarkana experienced in 1946. Alright, so we're moving on to another film whose real-life story is actually pretty close to the plot of a film, 1977's Eaten Alive. In this overlooked film by Texas Chainsaw Massacre director Tobe Hooper, a psychotic maniac owns a hotel, kills people, and then feeds them to his pet crocodiles. But the really fucked up thing here is replace hotel with bar, and you've more or less got the real life story. The real story is based around Joe Ball and his accomplice Clifford Wheeler, both from Texas. Most likely just like the Phantom Killer. Geez, when they say that everything's bigger in Texas, I guess that also includes the serial killer population. In the 30s, Ball built a bar and a pond behind it which housed 6 alligators. Ball charged visitors to see him feed live dogs and cats to the alligators, and it wasn't long until people in the area started reporting disappearances over the course of a few years. All these, mostly women, were in some way associated or had been to the bar that Joe Ball owned. And ironically enough, the bar was actually called the Sociable Inn, but what happened there was probably the furthest possible thing from sociable. When Joe Ball's second wife disappeared, yeah, second, police sought him out for questioning, but while at the scene he pulled up a pistol and began firing, eventually shooting himself as well. And what police discovered was something straight out of a horror film. By questioning Ball's accomplice and taking other witness testimonies from people who had been threatened into silence by him, they realized that Ball had killed 2 of the missing women and fed them to his alligators. Though these were the only 2 confirmed killings, it's believed that he's responsible for over a dozen more, but as no more remains could be found, we'll never really know the horrible truth. Alright, so with some pretty horrible stuff out of the way, let's move on to something super mysterious and the classic monster movie, The Blob. So, The Blob is from 1958 and was remade in 1988 in one of those rare cases where the remake is actually better than the original. In it, a weird gelatinous alien organism crashes on Earth near a small town where it basically begins eating and absorbing people, growing larger and stronger until destroyed by the town's teenagers. Alright, so let's keep it real. Nobody was actually eaten or absorbed by an alien blob, that we know of anyway, but the real-life basis of this film is actually really interesting. In 1950, two Philadelphia police officers, Joe Keenan and John Collins, were out on patrol when they suddenly spotted some kind of mass falling to Earth. They chased after it and later described in an official police report what they found, which was supposedly a glittering purple jelly spread out across the ground about 6 feet or 1.8 meters in diameter. They claimed that the mass was pulsating and it seemed to glow in the dark via some sort of bioluminescence. So you're probably thinking that these were two crackpot cops that just got bored some night, but that's actually where you're wrong. These were two very experienced and respected veteran police officers. So in other words, these people weren't really known for filing bogus reports. Like any true veteran in the situation, they called for backup and 2 more officers arrived. The other 2 went on to confirm that they saw the same thing in the official police report. A Sergeant Joe Cook later on decided to pick up the weird mass with his hands. Yeah, because that's totally what I would do when confronted with a weird alien organism. Touch it with my bare fucking hands. According to the police officers, the mass began dissolving once it came into contact with Cook, and after about half an hour, it was gone. There were news reports about this case at the time, and while it seems too crazy to be believed, all 4 police officers stand by it being true, and it was written about enough for producer Jack Harris to later on make the original The Blob in 1958, which would go on to get an awesome remake and is being remade again in 2019 and will supposedly star Samuel L. Jackson.
What's my name? What's my name? I don't know.
Because why not? He's in everything, and it just goes to show that this bizarre tale from 4 policemen has become a story that lives on almost 70 years later. So that about does it for this Sci-Fi-Night special. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if we missed your favorite horror film based on true life events, let us know, and maybe we'll talk about it in the future. So, Halloween continues here on Sci-Fi-Night. Happy Halloween, everybody, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween.
Well, what was it? Stop with it, kid. Well, it's kind of like a mass that keeps getting bigger and bigger.